Hi there, this is Dominic Keating. I played Malcolm Reed, particularly on Star Trek Enterprise, and you're listening to Kneel Before Pod.
Kneel Before Blog presents Kneel Before Pod.
Hello and welcome to another marvellous edition of Kneel Before Pod, the podcast that has neither an army nor a Hulk. An event a decade in the making is nearly upon us now that Avengers Infinity War is right around the corner, so it's time to go back to quite a while after it all started and talk about the first Avengers film, as well as the entire universe. So for this, I sent out a call and a brave squad of heroes answered. For the purpose of this, we have all chosen our own Marvel characters, and first up is our very own God of Hammers, fresh from the Bifrost, it's Kat.
Hello!
How are you?
I'm alright, thank you. Very excited to be here.
Good. That's what we like to hear. Next up is our master of the techie arts, the man who keeps this podcast from imploding. It's Chris.
Hello.
He also manages to make invites to screenings appear from thin air, so, maybe magic.
It could be. Or
Are you our
blackmail.
Doctor Strange?
Good guess. Lastly, we have a man driven by his own boundless obsession with the dark dimension, known as the internet, as well as the need to have freaky eyes. It's Isaac!
Hey!
So
Hello.
can anyone guess who he's supposed to be?
Vision?
No.
No. Ooh. Freaky eyes.
Eyes.
Freaky eyes and the internet.
Well,
Freaky
dark
bit.
dimension.
Oh.
I'll just give it away. We'll be here all night. Caecilius.
Ah.
It's a very
Mads
strange...
Mikkelsen.
Yes, the bad guy in
The bad guy in
Strange.
Doctor Strange.
Yes, okay. I've only seen that movie once.
He's nice and forgettable.
As are a lot of Marvel villains.
Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves here.
Yes.
And you might be wondering who I chose. So I'm the boss, head honcho, el numero uno, the Godfather, Lord of the Rings. I forgot what I was talking about a while ago. No, of course it's Captain America. Who else would I be? Because Captain America really needs a Scottish accent. That's the one thing that's missing.
Everything is improved with a Scottish accent, I think.
Yep. Well, I mean, we've got an English Superman, so why can't we have a Scottish Captain America?
Right?
A British Spider-Man.
True. So maybe it's time for the Scottish Captain America.
I think so. I think we've reached that point. Plus, Chris Evans is giving up the job soon, so I think I'll put in my application.
Well, you've already got the beard going for you.
Sometimes. Only when I'm not shaved for a few days. So, we're here to talk about, a very small set of indie films that make up a shared universe called the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I don't think that many people have heard about it, but hopefully we'll get it some recognition by this podcast. We'll get the word out there and people will have heard of it after this. I personally stumbled across it just randomly, but, I don't know how you all came by it. Was it the same? Just, posters at film festivals and all that? I've killed this joke already.
A little bit.
It was a very art house movement. It was very small scale, and a friend of mine was into the books and said, I really should get into the films, but it's not as good as the books. But, he said, you might like it. And, turned out he was right.
Do you know what? The argument could be made. If we really get deeply into it and whether the comic books are better than the films, it's a different story. But anyway.
If you wanted Civil War, Cat will give you Civil War.
Oh, yes. Team Thor for the win.
Team Thor. He wasn't even a side. He wasn't even there, but Team Thor.
That's why.
He was too busy off having fun on his own planet. Yeah, so I thought it might be a good idea to start talking about the Avengers, because I see that as the kind of centrepiece of this whole thing. It was the first thing they built towards, and then it did enable them to do all sorts of other weird stuff afterwards. It's just one of those things where now anything's possible, and they've proven that by making pretty much anything possible afterwards, and they continue to do so. They might continue to do so. We don't know what the future plans are, other than a few films. So we'll just get straight into spoiler-free chat about this, even though it's a few years old now. I think it's 8 years old if you believe Spider-Man, but I don't know. I think it's about 6 years old based on when it came out. So, Kat, we'll start with you. What did you think of the film without spoiling it for people that might not have seen it?
Sure. If you haven't seen the first Avengers film, I think it does a great job of bringing all the Avengers together in a way that is believable for them to have met. You know, the circumstances, I think, are pretty good. I really enjoyed it. I was really heavily into the MCU at the time. So 2012 April, so around this time actually. I think I saw it 7 times at cinema. Twice on the first day. So, you know, to give you an idea, I was just, so hyped up for it in the lead up. I was watching the trailers all the time, just speculating. I just couldn't wait. And it delivered. Truly, it was the kind of film I wanted it to be. And I think it set the bar very high for, the rest of the MCU. I mean, truly, that was the challenge. Can we make a movie with everybody in it and have it make sense and have it be fun and have it be a sustainable format? And as you say, they've cracked it. They've done it. And they keep doing it, 6 years later. And that's really cool. It was definitely peak. It absolutely was the culmination of phase 1. A really fun, really great kind of blockbuster film. And I have a lot of emotions.
Lots of emotions. Isaac, you can go next.
Yeah, because I didn't like the Avengers. Because I'd watched... When did the first Iron Man come out? Was that 2009?
2008.
2008. Yeah, I'd seen that one. I'd not seen any of the other ones. And I thought, I'll get back into this with the main one. And I came out and I never watched... I think I eventually watched Doctor Strange, whatever that one. So I think I missed out on 3 years. Then I went to watch Avengers, and I went, no, I'm not for me, not interested. I remember it just being just loads of sort of infighting for the first bit, and then there was something else, and there was I kept getting lost. I was oh, some more people are showing up, because I can't really I know it's a spoiler-free bit, but I can't really remember what's, because it was ages ago film. It's hard to sort of remember which bits are spoilers and which bits weren't. So I was these people are in and they're all fighting, and Loki's here, and I sort of left it. I was like, oh, that was a
well, now you've just spoiled that people fight in a superhero film. I mean,
people fighting it.
How could you?
Yeah. So I sort of left the cinema, and I was like, oh, everyone else is happy, but never mind. What else was out? I can't remember what else was out that year. I can't remember what sort of films it was comparable to. What else was it? 2012.
Spider-Man. That was the same year, wasn't it?
2012, really?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, damn.
The Dark Knight Rises, that was the same year.
Just doing a quick Google, actually. Yeah, Dark Knight Rises, Skyfall, that was the biggest one. But that was later that year. And you're right, Amazing Spider-Man. Oh, wow. Looper as well. Oh, and the first Hunger Games, of course.
Cabin in the Woods as well. I remember thinking...
Oh, that was good.
That was good.
This is a Joss Whedon film, but not the Joss Whedon film I want to see. It was a month before as well, so I was right in the mood for some Joss Whedon. So, Chris, what do you think of Avengers without the spoilers?
Well, I've got to be honest that when I I first heard about it, I was like, oh, this is what they've been building up to. It's like it hadn't quite clicked on me at the time. I think I'd watched the sort of the Incredible Hulk, but I hadn't stayed for the sort of post-creditsy thing, so I didn't know what that was about. And then Iron Man, I'd obviously seen little tie-ins to S.H.I.E.L.D. and that, and then Thor and everything, they start building up and building up and building up all these elements. So, yeah, when it finally came round, I was just really, really excited for it. And I think seeing the sort of unification of all these characters that you've become a bit invested in really sort of lit the fuse, really, on my my fanboyism of this, I think, is the best way to go around it.
We're all going to be picking on Isaac because he doesn't like it.
Yeah, sorry, Isaac.
Sorry in advance. I'm also in the I love it camp. I loved it from the first moment I saw it. There were several moments throughout the film where I had a big dumb grin on my face. I remember seeing it opening day, loving it, being super hyped for it. The whole MCU experiment was something I was really interested in because as a reader of the comics, it was quite common to be, you read an Iron Man comic and then Spider-Man turns up for a panel or two and it's just a thing. It's no big deal. Although it is kind of a big deal because it's like, oh, look, it's Spider-Man. I like Spider-Man. So what they essentially did was turn that into live action. Although at the time didn't think about just how big it was going to get, and the fact that you had 6 characters coming together in one film was remarkable in itself. And the fact that you got to know them in their own films. Although I think this film also works on its own merits as well. So it's... you could just watch it as a film because it tells you everything you need to know about the characters as long as you're willing to accept it. But I absolutely loved it, and I continue to love it. And every time there's a new Marvel movie coming out, I'm dead excited. Doesn't matter what one it is. So yeah, big fan. So we should just get into spoilers because I can't think of anything else without spoiling it. And Isaac's already spoiled that they fight, so shocking.
It's a big twist.
Big twist.
Shocking.
People fight a superhero film. Can you imagine? Okay. Everybody ready for spoilers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Avengers assemble!
Okay, we're safe. We can talk about whatever we want. We're on board the helicarrier. We can talk freely. No one's listening in that we know of. Apart from all the listeners, I hope. I hope they're all listening in. It's not that classified. So, I touched on this in my kind of blurb, but bringing characters together after solo films to see how they kind of come together and interact, it's something that hadn't really been done before, at least not to this scale. I mean, the closest analogue is sort of the Universal monsters, where everyone just comes together, where they have Dracula and the Wolfman and all that stuff, way back. But this is kind of, it's a long project where they spent the time building it up. And what do you think of that as an idea? When it was building up, Chris, you said that you didn't realise what was going on until you saw the Avengers. But,
I didn't quite realise until it was too late. It was like, that's what they're doing. Oh, that's such a smart idea. It's like they do in the comics where they all kind of team up because they're all in the same place.
Yeah.
I do you know what? I think it's something that other people have tried to replicate later on and haven't quite got right. But these characters, at the end of the day, exist in a universe where they are built to work together. So I think setting out with that goal in mind and still making the standalone films interesting to watch, some more successful than others, to be fair, is a tough job. And I think they managed to pull it off. I mean, when you finally get that shot, or those shots of the whole team standing and fighting together, it's a great payoff to, several films worth of work. 4 or 5 films worth before then?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2 of which were Iron Man films, but yeah. Because he was the popular one, despite being one of the most obscure at the time. But this
is the thing. They managed to take what is like one of the most, the most popular character in there, still give them a good enough role in the film, and tie in the others that you've got to know and give them enough of a standing. It's pretty well balanced considering what they could have done to it.
It's interesting to look back now and think that they essentially made this franchise out of all the characters that were really cheap to get a hold of at the time by Marvel Studios, because they were a very young not that profitable studio to begin with, so they had the rights for various characters and they brought them together. But it's when you think about what they've got now and what they've achieved since then, it's unimaginable. So they went with a bunch of second, third tier superhero characters and turned them into some of the most recognisable, iconic characters in cinema. It's crazy.
And with that, of course, the careers of everyone involved and the
Yes.
money that's come from, merchandising and all of that. It's truly ingenious. They've really cracked the formula.
Yeah, what invented the formula, really.
Yeah, quite.
And for some reason, others can't seem to just copy what they've done and make it successful. Because everyone else tries to rush it. That's
Exactly.
the problem.
Well, by everyone else, we mean the studio that will not be named.
I was talking about the Dark Universe. I don't know what you were on about.
Oh yeah, truly. Yeah, no, exactly that one.
You know, that cinematic universe that's had one film and they've already sacked it. So.
And that's it, yep.
Yeah, so I take it you think it was a successful experiment as well, Kat. You said you were heavily into it. I mean, what was your kind of build-up like as you were watching the films as they appeared?
I mean, I came into it a little bit late, and I think this is something that we're going to be touching on a little bit later with our own introductions to the universe. But I wasn't really watching along. I kind of came into it kind of halfway into phase 3. Phase 1. What? Phase 1. Phase 1 is what I meant.
Started. You only watched it last week.
Halfway into phase 1, I was like made aware of this thing. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I went back and I watched the films. So then it was like, all right, now I'm ready. And by the time that the film came out, I was really invested in a lot of the characters. I knew who they were. I had ideas about where the story might, go and, who the villain might be, etc. So... yeah, like whenever the trailer started dropping and, everything kind of started coming together, I was so into it. And perhaps, that sort of comparing to what Isaac said before about, not really being familiar with all these people and then coming into this film kind of, hello, here we are. You don't know who we are, but, let us entertain you, sort of. And... I knew who they were, and I think for most of us, knowing who they are and their stories and what they're each bringing to the table, I think that this movie really did it well, like bringing in people like Black Widow and the Hulk and like Hawkeye, who we'd only seen in that one scene in Thor. Suddenly becoming. Well, I mean, I think that he does something. I think he's valuable, even in that one scene, because he brings empathy. He's a very human character, Clint. He doesn't really have superpowers. He just has really good aim. That's it. And so, comparing him to everyone else, he is truly like the one guy who's like, I'm just here to help. And like he has a lot of empathy. He sees Thor like try to fight his way out of that compound in the first Thor film, and he goes, oh, I like him, I'm not going to shoot him. Like he can tell so much about a person from just that. And then when we see him in the Avengers film, he is that guy, who can just like tell a lot about people, and he's really, he sticks to his opinion and he defends others. And I think even in, which one was it? The Civil War that I rewatched recently. Again, he's the guy who defends the person who might not have had a voice. Like, he stands by Wanda. He says, okay, I'm going to get you out. Just, I don't know. I like him. I like Hawkeye. People give him a lot of crap, but I like him.
Yeah, I like Hawkeye. I just think his cameo in Thor is a bit... Well, here's this guy with a bow and arrow. And...
Yeah, I was like... like watching the first Thor film and not knowing who this guy is from the comics, I was like, who is this guy? Is he significant? And like I had to Google him. Why is he picking
up a gun?
Yeah, I was like, why? What's happening? Like they treat him like he's important, but we don't know what his name is. We don't know, what the hell? Like, who are you? And then eventually, like I Googled it and it was like, oh, I see. And perhaps that could have been handled a little bit better, his introduction.
I always thought he
anyway.
should have been in the rest of the film because he just disappears after that. But
Yeah, that's true.
yeah, but I don't like the first Thor film. Right?
No, my heart.
we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Isaac, you've already touched on that you weren't a fan, but what do you think of the idea of bringing them all together after a bunch of solo films and making it work in one big film?
Well, I don't know, because I didn't really know any of the characters. Like, it wasn't like I was too much of a filthy casual to know anyone. So it's hard to say, like, I can't really say it worked together as a film, because it's like at the end of the film I was like, I still don't know who any of these people are. They're just Scarlett Johansson and some dude with a bow and some guard guy and Hulk and then Iron Man, and I knew Iron Man and Captain America just sort of from like they by that point they were like busy, like cool enough so everyone knew them. So I think like, and even after having now like know the comics, know the characters and stuff, and we went back and saw it again like whenever I moved here, it's like I still don't like it even now I know what is going on and know like the Chitauri and the Infinity Stones and everything. I'm like I still don't think it works. It's still just a load of sort of people just sort of having an ego competition for like the first hour, and then just nonsense for the next hour.
That more or less sums it up, to be fair. More or less. Well, in a kind of very broad nutshell, but
you did. To be fair, you did kind of pick the wrong film to pick it back up on.
Yeah, it's definitely not a film. It's not a go into the universe film. It's like watching the finale of a TV series first.
Yes.
See, it is something that is impossible for us to view it from that point of, if you've not seen the other films, what do you take away from it? And you're very clear that it kind of spoils some of the enjoyment for you because you're not already invested in the characters and you don't already know their sort of personas before they arrive.
Yeah. So I remember watching like the opening scene and like, we got the blue cube and Loki turns up and he's like, oh no, he's got the blue cube, and I'm like, I'm already, it's only been like a minute and I'm already so far away from this film, and I'm like, so I know the agent with sunglasses and he's got a bow, and now there's a car chase, and by that point I was like, oh, this is definitely not. By that point I was like, I'm already out immediately. So yeah, it's not a film that you couldn't start if you're introducing someone to the Marvel unit like films.
Yeah, we all watched that opening scene and went, oh my god, Dr. Selvig's back. Oh,
yeah,
I like
exactly.
that guy.
Yeah.
And I was just like, hi Coulson, it's good to see you again. I was like, I don't know who Maria Hill is.
So
Well,
maybe
I knew
why
who the character was, but like,
yeah. So maybe the Marvel didn't rush into their movie, but like their big team up movie, but I rushed into their big team up movie. So it's like it's the opposite effects. All these like Tom Cruise's The Mummy and stuff. Like I had their method of team up movies going into it. It's like, I'll work it out. They're all basically superheroes, and he's got a hammer and he's got a shield. They're all like, but then you go and you're like, no, I can't. You can't jump in. It's not. There's too much lore and past stuff going on.
see, it's interesting that you say that, because after like half a dozen viewings or something, I decided I would try and think about it as if I'd never seen a Marvel film before and didn't know who these characters were. And alright, maybe it doesn't tell you exactly who the characters are and why they're significant, but I think it does a good enough job of telling you who they are in this film, what their purpose is in this film. And obviously there's a certain amount of suspension of disbelief. You have to believe in the fact that some guy can fly about in a rocket-powered suit of armour, and, some guy can turn into a giant green creature, and so on. You have to kind of accept the conceit of it. And I realise it's impossible for me to say, well, if I'd never seen this before, I'd be able to follow it. But, I feel like it spends a lot of time introducing the characters in a way that works in terms of their role in the particular dynamic. So, when you first meet Iron Man, you learn that he's a tech genius and all that stuff. I think every character's introduction gives you a flavour of what to expect from them. And I think it does it pretty well, and the funniest thing is when with Mark Ruffalo, they recast him from Edward Norton in The Incredible Hulk, and you've got this kind of every scene that he's in almost he reminds you who he is because he's the only one you might not recognise. So he's just like, yeah, remember me, I'm Bruce Banner, I turn into the Hulk, and every scene it's like that. It's I think Joss Whedon does an excellent job with the screenplay, just making it punching it up to make it kind of accessible, or as accessible as possible, because the key to the success of this film was, is it watchable, or is it just going to be one big self-referential thing for 2 hours?
I think there is a problem. I think story is the biggest problem though, because you said that Josh Whedon wrote a good screenplay and stuff, but Loki's just there, and then the tutorial, because they gotta fight someone, and there's no well, there's character. Yeah, we get who Iron Man is, we get Captain America is. We don't know. It's all very just sort of, they have to be. Oh, Loki's here. There's a cube here. There's aliens coming. We better get these guys together, and they go to Berlin, and these other bits. But it's all just sort of, it's just stuff happening in a row. It's
plot driven and not character driven.
Yeah,
That's
it's just
true.
sort of here is this. Now we have to go here. Then eventually we got to open the sky thing, and all the aliens are coming. But we don't know why we don't even know who they are. They're just it's just a thing. It's just the thing you have to punch in the film.
Yeah, it's full of MacGuffins and plot devices. True.
But to be fair, the pending army isn't really set up before, though. That's the thing. I mean, even if you've watched the other films, you don't know that there's an army waiting to come through to Earth.
Yeah, but it's just a generic, standard villain, isn't it? It's just it's just a wall of punchable, expendable things. And even Loki is supposed to be the god of tricks and lies and things. He just sort of, he's not very good at his job, really. He gets I have no idea. He's sort of, he's never is he fooling anybody? Is he here for any what does he want? He's not manipulating anything. He's just sort of, he's kind of just seeing what happens by the seat of his pants. He's I'll just try this and see how this pans out, and he doesn't really get into anyone's head or anything. So he's kind of not used. I don't think he's used very well there. He's just Loki, isn't it? Because he's the Marvel villain that people remember from because they can't use Red Skull, or they can't use Man with Beard from Iron Man. So they got to use Loki. It's the other one. He's the one people oh, I know this villain is, and it was too early to use Thanos or anything. So I think he was just in the film because he did well. People liked him from the earlier ones, but not for actually because if it was any other villain, if you took Loki out of that film and just put any of the other Marvel villains, it's basically the same.
I disagree. I think they had no choice at the time but to use Loki, because he was the only one with a beef with anybody and with enough power to perhaps enact that beef. The fact that he wanted to rule so badly that he did what he did in the first Thor film, that he faked his own death, went off to find people to fight for him, and then went, what's that place that my dad saved that one time? I'm gonna go back and destroy it because I hate everybody. And he's the only one from the lineup of the first phase that with the capacity to do that. Perhaps because, every other film has gotten rid of their villains in turn. Whoever was the bad guy in the first Iron Man, we never see him again.
Because he dies. Exactly.
The guy in Iron Man 2 dies as well. Incredible Hulk doesn't really have a villain, does it? It's just about Bruce being sad.
It does the Abomination.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Roth. See, I don't even remember that film. It's just so... Anyway.
I love the Incredible Hulk, and it's the forgotten stepchild.
It really is. It really is the forgotten stepchild. And as Isaac said, the Red Skull from Captain America, gone and dusted, so we can't use him either. But I think he does bring something to the table that no other villain could, and I like that they didn't invent a new villain. I like that they brought someone with a past that the audience could go, oh yeah, like I remember that this guy, you know, has issues and is a bit of a psycho. You know, what's he gonna do now, sort of thing. He is unpredictable. I do agree that they don't really use his powers enough in a way that is, you know, sort of fair to the character as well. He does possess Clint and Selvig at one point, but that's a bit like, as it's just, yeah, like it's plot driven. It's not necessarily character driven.
Possession has nothing to do with him either.
I live for the moments. I live for the moments in the first Avengers film that are all about, you know, finding out where Loki was in the interim, what has happened to him. It's alluded to that he might have been tortured, or somebody, you know, might have hurt him, perhaps Thanos or someone, you know, under his wing. And that's what I'm more interested in, and that we never really find out anything about. Like, even so far, we haven't found out anything about what exactly happened in that kind of blank space in between the first Thor film and Avengers. But yeah, I do agree that, you know, it is plot driven, and perhaps that's a bit of a weakness. It does feel, perhaps at this point, because it's 2018 and we've all seen a lot of superhero films, and the MacGuffins and like the kind of common tropes of superhero films specifically now have become like painfully obvious. And especially looking back at the first Avengers film, like it's easy to kind of go back and recognize flaws like this. The fact that it's not necessarily driven by, you know, characters making decisions. It's more like people are reacting to something that's happening. Oh, we have to go get this item that will help us do this thing, so let's go to Germany for some reason. You know, it's just full of moments like this. And I do agree that that's not very compelling, or at least as compelling as it could be if it was more, you know, character driven, about people's choices, about what people want, and then sort of, you know, the people who stand in their way. And yeah, that would have been nicer. And I do agree as well about the punchable army thing, the gray, faceless kind of, you know, they all look the same. They are expendable because they're not human. And that is a recurring motif within the MCU as well, and something that is a weakness overall within the genre. But anyway, I do like it.
But it is just so much fun. I think it becomes character driven. I mean, I think early on it is about characters reacting to a situation, which is fair enough because a situation has arisen and they have to all have a reason to come together in the first place. But by the end of the film, they each find a reason to stay together. So, I mean, the death of Coulson is seen as that turning point. You know, I'm using inverted commas when I say death of Coulson.
Spoilers for well, that's why it's inverted commas. Spoilers for another universe. Yeah.
Well, might as well be. But that's seen as kind of the turning point, but that kind of wakes everyone up, and you've got S.H.I.E.L.D. as this kind of corrupting influence throughout as well. And by the end of the film, every single one of them have made the decision to tell S.H.I.E.L.D. to bugger off because, you know, they don't think that Fury or S.H.I.E.L.D. are any better than the than Loki or his army, so they make their own decision to sort it out. Yeah, it is a bit plot driven. I don't think Loki's that much of a trickster in any of the films anyway. I mean, he is a little bit here and there, but like they call him, you know, they call him a trickster. It's almost like when they call Ronan the Accuser, when he doesn't accuse anyone of anything. So,
well, how many times has Loki made you think he's dead and he's appeared back somewhere else at the end? Come on, that's a pretty neat trick. Well, that's pretty tricky.
Yeah. But what you expect is him to be able to manipulate people into doing what he wants by making them think that they are doing what they want. And he doesn't really do much of that. And it's interesting in this film that what he's supposed to do gets turned round on him when Black Widow tricks him into thinking that she's vulnerable because of what he's saying, and in fact it's just her, you know, manipulating him into giving up information that he has. So that was a nice reversal of that, and there's a couple of reversals of stuff like that in this film. Maybe he's not set up as a trickster before that, but it's just interesting to see Black Widow use that against him, and that kind of shows how good she is as well.
I think film Loki's just kind of like a pantomime villain more than because he pretends to be dead but he's back. That's like, it's Blofeld in James Bond or the Master in Doctor Who, or it's just the popular one really. Whereas and then I've not read too many stories of Loki in, but it'd be fun. I'm thinking more of in Age of Ultron when Scarlet Witch gets into people's heads, and like that sort of stuff. But a whole film of this, is any of the film we're watching is it something Loki's spinning on us, or is it actually what's happening? That sort of thing. So that'd be quite fun to have with him before Tom Hiddleston gets bored.
Gets bored and wants to appear in King Kong sequels.
Yeah, when he's sick of getting handed briefcases of money.
Kong, this time it's serious.
It would be fun if all other Tom Hiddleston films are Loki films. And it's all part of a very big plot. It's I've been living in this high rise and I've got King Kong and I've been making my money as a night manager. Now I'm going to come and get the Avengers. It's 10 years of his actual career is all just Loki, and it's all just one big trick.
And Crimson
if that
Peak's
happens,
just
then
as
I
weird as
will.
one.
Yeah. Crimson. I'm not saying Crimson Peak yet, but put all the Tom Hiddleston films together and make that turn out to be one big plot, and then I'll forgive the Avengers. That's my final offer. Kevin Feige.
And we all know that Kevin Feige is listening to find out what we think, and he's going to change accordingly.
Yeah. And if you are listening, then we're happy to sign up for the Marvel money, please. I'd love to. I'll wear as many solo shirts as you like if you give me money. Or anything by Disney. What else are they making? Frozen 2.
Mary Poppins Returns.
Yeah, Mary Poppins Returns. All of them. Yeah, if you're listening, Kevin, I will sign on the dotted line immediately.
I mean, everyone thinks I'm being paid off by Marvel to like their films anyway. I might as well be.
Yeah, we're not being paid by them to like their films. We're being paid by them to hate DC. There's a difference.
Yeah, there is a huge difference. I guess it's hard for me to get away from how much I like this film and to think about how the story drives the action or the actions of the characters more than I'd initially thought. It's one of those movie magic things, isn't it? You just trick the audience by, maybe this doesn't make a whole ton of sense, but are you enjoying it? Yes, fine. And then it's one of those. It's to encourage you to think about something else while you could be thinking about this, and this film does that a lot, where it delivers a lot of stuff, and maybe it does have a bit of a slow start with a car chase underground and things like that. I'm just don't really know who these people are. Samuel L. Jackson's been in 2 scenes of stuff before this. Hawkeye, we've seen him once. Maria Hill, this is the first time we've seen her. Why should I care about any of these people? And then you get to the point where you start introducing Black Widow, and then the Hulk, and then Captain America, and so on. I think the way it introduces people is meaningful. And I talked about this in the Justice League podcast, where in Justice League, whenever you meet all the characters, it tells you nothing more than you need to know about them in order to keep the plot moving. Whereas with this, it gives you a bit more insight into who they are when you do meet them. At least for the most part. I don't think you find out a ton about Black Widow, other than she's a spy and she's in the middle of some situation.
I wanted to say something about Maria Hill in particular. While I like the film generally, I found her character very bland. And somehow, I didn't believe that she had the authority that we are told she has. At some point when she starts barking orders, and I'm I don't feel like we should be listening to you. I just don't...
shut up, Robin.
Yeah, I just didn't believe that she was second in command, and I don't think that she believed it. She delivered the commands with just this kind of half-hearted tone. That I don't know. I just never believed that she was who we are told she is. And I suppose I didn't really warm up to her until Winter Soldier. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's when you kind of get the proper impression that she is the second in command.
Yeah.
Really, but up until that point, yeah, I kind of agree with you. It's like she doesn't appear to be Fury's personal assistant, but seems to be somewhere close in middle management, doesn't it? She.
Yeah, but when we watched Jessica Jones, I was like Hogarth. I was like, oh, she'd be good as Maria Hill. And Craig was like, we've already got a Maria Hill. I was like, I can't. Like, who is it? I think she, she's just sort of. She's the other Hydra member with lines, really, for a bit. Like, she's not as imposing as like Nick Fury or like a big sort of leadership character.
Yeah.
I suppose I didn't give her much thought in the first Avengers film, other than okay, she's here, and I hadn't watched How I Met Your Mother by that point, so the significance of her being there was kind of lost on me. The fact that people were excited about her presence, I was like, don't know who she is. Fine, the actress, but I watched How I Met Your Mother afterwards, and then it does become a bit shut up, Robin. After that, but she is much better in Winter Soldier, and then again in Age of Ultron.
Mm-hmm.
And she's in a couple of episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as well, where she does a good job. So maybe the character's not necessary for the Avengers, especially when you've got Coulson, and everyone loves Coulson. He's all of us. He's that guy that's there. He's loving it. He's enjoying just being part of the team.
Just happy to be invited. I know the feeling.
Yeah. I've always liked Coulson, right when you see him in the first Iron Man film. And he's only missing from one of the Phase 1 films, actually. Captain America, for some reason he doesn't appear in that, but he is really good, and they did a couple of shorts with him as well where he was quite endearing. So I think as the kind of human, very common human aspect looking in, he was really good, because he's the, will you sign my trading cards, Captain America? And he's just fanboying all over the place.
Something I really like about the relationship between the characters, and I suppose it does fall within the umbrella of, ego match within the first hour, but the idea of Tony Stark meeting Captain America and the complicated stuff that comes with, this is the guy that my dad helped make, and my dad is dead, and here he is, and I just want my dad thanks, sort of thing, which Tony has a lot going on of. And it's just really interesting to see them finally meeting, and what that meeting is like, and the fact that their egos do clash because they both want to be in charge, and one of them technically is, and the other one is in principle, because he's just so good. He's just such a nice man, and everyone just wants to listen to him. Whenever they're both kind of giving orders, and Tony Stark just turns around and looks at him who's in charge here, sort of thing. I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah, the ego trip is definitely a big part of it, and you've got this. They shouldn't be in the same room together, at least at the beginning, because there are too many egos on display. You've got Banner, who's standing off in the background, just trying not to get involved, because if he gets involved, things will get giant and green. But you've got Stark, who wants to be the centre of attention. You've got Steve, he just wants to get the job done, and he thinks that Stark is in the way of that. And you've got Thor, who's just stumbling around, kind of primitively, I suppose, because he's just there to just drag Loki back to Asgard, and he doesn't care about employing any finesse whatsoever. So you've got this real clash of personalities, which is just great. And I think that the film uses that as an excuse to establish the relative power levels as well. So you've got this, Thor and Iron Man are fighting because they don't like each other. But this also tells you how powerful Iron Man is versus Thor. So, Thor is up there, but Iron Man can hold his own with damage. And then Captain America turns up, and his shield can block this hammer that we already know can break anything. So it gives you the kind of idea of what you're dealing with power-wise. And that's very smart storytelling.
I think, to put it comparatively, I don't know if are any of you wrestling people, but it's if that scene where they fight in the forest. But it's kind of if you because I used to, my old flatmate was into wrestling, and you go and everyone's going wild. It's the Undertaker's finally going to fight John Cena, and I'm okay, and it's like, yeah, they are. You know, she's like, oh look, this is the power levels, and like this is how they're like all the moves and stuff. And I'm like, yep, okay, that's like I don't know what the power levels were to begin with, and everyone seems fine at the end. So yeah, like that bit. Well, So yeah, people who understand like, oh, it's Iron Man, and that's the Mjolnir, and only those worthy are able to like withstand it. But then yeah, if you're coming in as just somebody who's just watching just 3 actors, just sort of whack props, you're like, okay, this will have to, this bit will go, and then they have to be friends. So yeah, when you're not like invested in like the characters and like the expectations of them, like, oh, what's it going to be like when Captain America finally meets Iron Man? Like, for everyone else, just like, oh yeah, the 2 characters are just sort of.
Yeah, that's where the kind of fan service element comes in, where Joss Whedon is clearly a big fan of all this stuff, and he wanted to cram as much in this film as he could, and that enthusiasm shows. So it's like, it's the classic comic book question. Everybody wants to know who's stronger out of this guy versus this guy, and then what would happen if Iron Man and Thor fought? Who would win? It's like, well, nobody would, because Captain America would stop them before it got out of hand, and that's exactly what happens here. He just shows up and he's like, right, guys, stop it, and then after that they kind of get on task a little bit. So in terms of the character dynamics, so what you've got is they almost pair them off slightly. I mean, everybody gets their moment with Coulson, pretty much, but you've got the Stark and Banner bromance because they're both science guys, and Stark finally meets someone who's smart, if not smarter than he is, and that's kind of instead of being resistant to that, it's something he really likes. They get along really well, and I love that Stark keeps taunting him into becoming the Hulk throughout. It just like zaps him and things like that. It's the bit where it's like, so how do you control it? Was it melon? Yeah,
is it Pilates? Is it like, what are you doing? What's your secret?
Melon, jazz, bongo drums, or a big bag of weed, stuff like that. And it doesn't get the answer, but the Pilates thing is when he's making fun of Steve for being old. It's like, how do you say so?
Oh, Grandpa, you're pretty spry for a 70-year-old.
and that's just Stark's nature. He just gets under everyone's skin. Yeah. Except Black Widow, actually, because there's a couple of moments in the film where she's kind of impressed by his antics. It's when he overrides the PA system, she kind of smirks a little bit. And the bit where he says that he's genius, playboy, billionaire, philanthropist, she just kind of goes, yeah. That's what he is. So she's secretly impressed by him, and it's interesting that they've not really done much with that.
Yeah, I guess so. But I think they've always been kind of friendly. I think that's the idea behind this.
Yeah. I think Steve got in the way. During Civil War, the two become a lot closer, don't they? Not Civil War, during Winter Soldier, sorry.
Winter Soldier, yeah.
The two of them a lot family. But, you quickly glance over what I think is one of the funniest lines in the film. That one, and it's been memed off of so many times. The billionaire, playboy, philanthropist line, and all the other bits. Cap with his references, different things that he's out of date, little lines that people give that he doesn't quite get, which I think is neatly done. Yes.
Yeah, that. I think Cap's quite interesting as well because. I can't remember where I saw this, but it's talking about how. So this is the first film where Cap has been unfrozen. So he gets immediately drawn into a situation that's quite massive. So he doesn't really have much time to adjust to his new surroundings. But you've got the whole idea. You've got a guy who's suffering with loss. He's lost everything that he ever knew. In the original comics, he was only frozen for like 20 years. So everyone he knew was just a bit older, but kind of still alive. And weirdly, there's more time has passed in real time in the comics than since he got frozen. But the time gap for him is quite significant. And the way I've been encouraged to think about Steve throughout the rest of the films is there's never a point where he isn't sad about something. So he's always contemplating what he's lost, and he's trying to find a place in the world, and he's always trying to find something to do. So like the Avengers seems good for him because I can do this. I can throw my shield at stuff and help out, but he still doesn't have a place. On the team he doesn't really have a place because he doesn't understand what anyone else is talking about.
Yeah, I completely agree.
It's an interesting way to look at him. He's always just a bit sad, just a bit morbid. Not emo, but morbid.
So you're saying Captain America needs a hug?
He
does
does.
need a hug. Yes, Steve. Steve. I was watching the Infinity War trailer recently, and just like that one moment where like bearded Steve is like grappling Thanos' just like one hand, and he's struggling. I'm like, no, Steve, somebody help him. I can't. There's one thing that I forgot to say. There's this really interesting link between the scenes in which we are introduced to all the Avengers. So somebody has a line that introduces the next scene somehow.
Yeah,
like,
I get the big guy. You should have left it in the ocean.
Exactly. I love those.
Soldiers.
War is won by soldiers, and just like all of those little moments. It's one of my favorite things about this movie, that it's actually really well constructed in places, and it really shows it in these moments in particular. I really like it.
And Joss Whedon says that's accidental.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
sure it was.
Yeah. Sure it was. I believe you, Joss. Yeah. Thousands wouldn't, but I believe you. Yeah, that it's a good way of kind of doing it, because it's almost like checking off a list of, now it's time to get to this guy and this guy and this guy, and you've got the connecting tissue, obviously, of S.H.I.E.L.D. and I think Banner's introduction is the most interesting one, because you're almost meeting this guy for the first time as well. Because you've seen the Edward Norton version, but the Mark Ruffalo version is nothing alike. They are not the same character at all. So you're getting this kind of impression of, I guess it's someone that he's accepted what he is, but still kind of afraid of it. And so, I love the line about the Tesseract, and he's like, what does Fury want me to do, swallow it? It's like, well, but I kind of like to see.
That's actually such a sad moment for him, I think. And he grapples with this a lot in the film, the idea that they just want him for the Hulk, and the insistence of Stark that, no, we want you for your brain, but then it really turns out really they do want him for the Hulk. And just that's his kind of like the cross he bears, throughout is, I am me, I am not this other guy. He's constantly at war with his other self, and the idea that they don't want him for who he is and what he can offer is quite hurtful.
Although initially they do genuinely seem to want him for, his ability to find the cube, because that is their only objective at that point. And I don't think that S.H.I.E.L.D. want the Hulk running about, because at the end of the day, Fury's objective is to make sure the alien invasion doesn't happen. Well, I suppose he doesn't know about it at that point, until Thor tells him about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thor turns up and drops some exposition. Yeah, and kind of onto Thor as well. It's his interaction with other characters is really interesting, because you've got this whole, he thinks he's a god and thinks he's above them a bit, and so it's almost the learning humility lesson again, where he has to see these people as worthy, and it is definitely the scepter that's doing the, manipulating them slightly, but he is kind of doing that, you're so petty and tiny, and he thinks that he's better, where he's just not. I mean, the first thing he does is just trash the place when he shows up and forcibly remove Loki. He doesn't try and talk to anybody, he just comes rushing in, grabbing people and flying off.
It does kind of remove some of the good work that was done through his own introduction film, through the Thor film, when he comes in and, like you say, kind of trashes the place and acts a bit disrespectful to the locals, for want of a better phrase. It does kind of undo some of that. Thankfully, most of it's sort of restored in the end. There's a bit of a sort of openness there at the end, but at first you're a bit put off by it, I think.
Well, there's an excellent moment for Thor, I think. It's just after he's been kicked off the helicarrier, and he's, it takes him a few seconds to realise that he can't just hit the glass to get out of it, because, not that smart. He's kind of dumb. But, well, he is, I mean. Yeah, it's the moment where he's in that meadow and he sees the hammer and he kind of hesitates before picking it up.
Yeah.
Almost as if he thinks he's not worthy of it anymore. And it's the way it's shot. It's almost like the hammer's looking at him, judging him, which is like such a nice moment. It's just little things like that. And again, Joss Whedon's enthusiasm for the material just shines through there in moments like that.
I do love that moment as well, and I maintain that Mjolnir kind of feels sentient in a way. Like it has a personality throughout, like most of the films. I think that there is like a sort of to and fro somehow, even though it's an object. Like, I don't know, it's a bit strange. But I guess we'll never know.
It's now dead. Spoilers.
Yeah.
For another.
Spoiler for Thor Ragnarok, but there's no more Meow.
Well, we don't know what's going to happen in Infinity War. Maybe we'll get a new one.
Maybe.
The soul of the original will be transferred to the... But yeah, it does have some kind of gauge of worthiness, doesn't it? So it's constantly challenging its user to be worthy of it. So there's that. I mean, they don't really do much with the worthy aspect of it in the first Avengers film because there isn't time. I mean, the closest is when the Hulk tries to lift it and he can't. And I love seeing that because it's just good fun seeing the people try to lift Mjolnir because nobody can. Except almost Steve.
Except Steve for a little bit, yes.
and Vision, of course, but, they never explain why that is. Because they don't know, I suppose. So the film sets out to be, it's a summer blockbuster. And it's one of my favourite summer blockbusters of the last 20 years, we'll say. It's up there with, like, Jurassic Park for me in terms of modern classics. And and Pacific Rim, which is also a modern classic as far as I'm concerned.
Hell yeah.
Listen to us talk about it for 4 hours if you don't believe it.
Yes!
Well, it and its sequel for 4 hours in total. And it definitely sets out delivering that. I mean, I remember the action sequence at the end. Joss Whedon was talking about how he made it his mission to top Transformers 3, which at the time was the biggest city-destroying chaos out there. But he also wanted it to have some meaning. So, as in characters that you care about, rather than a mess of different coloured robots that just get cut into pieces. And definitely succeeds. That end action sequence, you know where everybody is, you know what everybody's doing, and you know what the stakes are.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I really approve the way they bring everyone together. I think the team all bounce off each other well. I think the way it's set up does all right. I agree partly with Isaac about the fact that they don't maybe introduce some characters for people afresh. They do assume some knowledge going into this, or at least it pays off more with some knowledge, I think, than it does going in as a blank slate. But I think it's one of the best films that they've done, really, because the struggle to include so many characters later on, I think, begins to hamper in some of the films, which makes me worry slightly for Infinity War as much as it makes me happy to have all these characters together finally. I at the same time, there's that little bit of hesitation in my head.
Yeah, it's one of those. I mean, I remember when Age of Ultron was coming out, I was thinking, how are they going to pull this off? There's just so many people in this bloody film. And, we'll get on to Age of Ultron, but, I like Age of Ultron. And in this one, you've got less characters, and it is a mission to get them all together and have something meaningful to do. But how lucky are they that there was a previous cast built in where everybody just bounces off each other so well. Everyone has such natural chemistry. I mean, they could have easily just had a situation where one person just drags it all down. And I actually feel like Edward Norton would have been that if he'd stuck around. I feel like his personality would have been too big for that. Whereas everyone else seems content to just get on with it and give the other actors the floor when they really deserve it and things like that. So I wonder what it would have been like had Edward Norton shown up in this film.
It's an interesting thought, actually. I don't know.
I really think that Norton was miscast. I didn't really like him as Banner. So when they cast Mark Ruffalo, I was like, yeah, there we go. That's Bruce Banner.
I think Norton was fine for that film, but as I said, the two versions of Banner aren't the same. They've completely rewritten him for this film. Which is fine because it works better. But the dynamic they built up between all the actors is great.
I really like the friendship that develops between Stark and Banner, the so-called science bros.
Science bros.
Yeah, yeah, that was unexpected. I didn't really necessarily expect them to, become friends somehow, but it does make sense.
Yeah.
And I think it's played really well. Like you say, the dynamic between the actors is quite good.
I mean, you get that with Black Widow and Hawkeye as well. She's the one that kind of snaps him out of it towards the end and gets everything back on track.
And it's the first time they've met, as far as we see. So, yeah.
Well, you assume they must have met before. Well,
yeah. Well, you know that they've worked together a lot.
But it's the first time you've seen them work together on screen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the same is true for the entire cast, to be fair. But I don't know. It's just this... They're the only characters with a pre-existing relationship. And they bring that across. Whereas the rest of them are meeting for the first time. And, I mean, I'll talk to it. I could talk for hours about how great I think Chris Evans' casting is as Cap. Because, I mean, I thought he was a good Human Torch as well. Let's not forget that. He's the first of the rehabilitated Human Torches into the MCU. But I think his casting is great because there's so many lines that Cap has, where in the comics he's been written as pretty horribly cheesy at a lot of points. But I think Chris Evans managed to deliver them with enough sincerity. The one that always springs to mind is the bit where I think it's Hawkeye says, "How are we going to do this?" And he says, "As a team." And if delivered any other way, it would have just been, "Oh my God." But the way he delivers it, it's like, yeah, that works.
What's the story upstairs?
The power surrounding the cube is impenetrable.
Thor's right. We got to deal with these guys.
How do we do this?
As a team, I have unfinished business with Loki.
Yeah? We'll get in line.
Save it.
Definitely. I do think it works overall.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we are all blessed with Chris Evans, to be honest with you. I was really surprised at how well they made it work with him as, like, tiny, skinny Steve.
Yeah.
And then obviously with the transformation into actual Steve, like obviously from that point on is where the story truly begins. But within, I think, the Avengers cast, like I think he's so pure as like a person. He truly is Captain America if his Twitter feed is anything to go by. He is the captain we deserve, and the captain we need, and the captain we have, at least for now. I think he's truly fantastic. And I said fantastic. I'm glad that like the whole Fantastic Four thing is in the past also, because I think Cap suits him so much more, or rather he suits Cap. He really embodies Captain America.
Yeah, and I always say that in Spider-Man Homecoming you've got the PSAs that show how Cap could be if he was written terribly.
Yes!
And obviously it's a deliberate joke, but it's like, with less skilled writers you could have had this.
Yeah, a lot of life lessons being delivered.
Yeah, him just standing there being this paragon of virtue, giving like meaningless advice. And you see it a bit in Winter Soldier where his morals are tested and he doesn't waver at any point. And even in this film,
I think he does waver, and I think that's why Winter Soldier is interesting and why it's good. Because in the first Captain America film, his morals don't waver. He starts a good guy, he ends a good guy, he kills some Nazis in the middle, but overall, he doesn't waver. But in Winter Soldier, he questions where his loyalty lies and whether, he's been fighting for the good guys the whole time. Whether he can trust anybody. And he's such an implicitly trusting person. I think he definitely wavers in Winter Soldier. I mean, if the ending of the film is anything to go by.
Yeah, although his principles never change. What I mean is he never thinks about, I think Fury has a point here. He always knows what the right thing is for him. He's never budging on that whatsoever. And even in this film, it's the bit where he says, "I'm not," where Stark says, "I'm not marching at Fury's fife," and he's like, "Neither am I." But we do have a job to do. We've got an alien invasion, so like, we'll just steal a jet and get on with it. It's fine.
Yeah. And that's where the whole Civil War thing comes in. Is sort of you're either one team or you're the other, and both point of views aren't necessarily wrong. Yeah. But I think it's a character that's been written very well. Chris Evans has done a great job, and it's kind of impossible at this point to imagine anyone else playing him. I would struggle to come up with a name that would work as well, I think.
Remember when it was almost John Krasinski?
Well, there you go. I would not know who else to cast in there, even if I was to look to the other people that they've managed to cast in the MCU, and they've done some pretty good casting in this.
Yeah.
I mean, they did get to the point now, or they have got to the point now where they can basically ask for whoever they want to appear as whatever they want in these things. But I think Chris Evans has done a great job, and I don't want him to die in the new films, but we know in the real world that contracts do expire, so hopefully they keep him on.
Yeah. Speaking of contracts expiring, there's always a rumor about this will be the last appearance of Tony Stark, because if nobody wants Robert Downey Jr. to leave, and I think that was another example of pitch perfect casting, because they cast as close to the real life Tony Stark as you would ever get. And at least, I don't think Robert Downey Jr. might not be a tech genius. I don't know, maybe he is. I have no idea. Never spoken to the guy. But certainly in terms of the life that he's lived and the things that he's been through and the life experience that he has, they cast him perfectly. And I remember at the time there was a bit of trepidation around it, because he was just on his comeback tour, and it wasn't clear whether he could be trusted to turn up for filming and stuff at that point. But Iron Man was definitely the rehabilitation of him, for certainly a larger part of the audience than say Kiss Kiss Bang Bang would attract.
But what a return, what a return, and then just added on in the other films. I mean, he's the character that you've seen the most of before going into Avengers.
Yeah.
So there was a lot riding on his performance in this film.
Yeah, and he's funny. When you see pictures of him just outside of the films, you're not sure whether it's Robert Downey Jr. or Tony Stark. They've become interchangeable at this point. So it's such a great piece of casting.
I don't know that he was Tony Stark before they cast him. I think that he has become the embodiment of Tony Stark. But I don't know that he was this guy before the film came out, before Iron Man.
It's when I'm talking about as a connection to the comic book character. In the comics, he's an alcoholic. He struggles with his own personal demons, and Robert Downey Jr. has been through a measure of that. And even though they never directly did that story in the films, there's still that kind of unhinged quality to him, especially in the earlier appearances.
I suppose so, yeah. I can see that.
Yeah, and here he's just great, but I like that he's a bit of a rallying force for the team. He gets involved for his own reasons, and he's always pretty selfish about it, but like his decision to fly off to New York to fight Loki is his own. He's not doing it for selfish reasons, and he's almost ready to sacrifice himself, except it's not going to actually happen, because Iron Man 3 has already started filming as you're watching this film, when it's in the cinema. So so it's coming, but at the same time, since it's Joss Whedon, it's not out of line for him to kill a character. Even a beloved one, because he does that all the damn time. Although it doesn't in either of these films, to be fair. Isaac, what are your general thoughts on casting? You haven't said anything in a while.
I don't know. Well, they're all fine, aren't they? I don't really know. I'm not very good at casting when it comes to casting people.
Despite the fact that you're often talking about who should play different characters.
Well, yeah, it's fun to say that Kelsey Grammer will be Doctor Doom, but I don't know. When they cast Thingy as Iron Man, I have no idea. I don't know what. I wasn't if it was internet buzz around it or anything. I wasn't anything I was looking into. So that's just a world I never really explored. So, yeah, they're fine, aren't they? And I can't think of anything. They're all pretty good.
Cool. I actually always thought Hemsworth was a weak link out of the lot of them.
What?
Yeah.
What? No. Do you know what my first thought was when I walked into the first Star Trek film? And he's in it for like a hot minute before, spoiler alert, he dies, I guess. I thought, man, like, this guy has such a face. He looks like a hero. He just looks like, I would follow you type dude. Like, oh, wow, who is he? And at the time, he hadn't really been in much. And then the next thing he does is Thor, and man, they got the casting right, I thought. Like, he does have, like, that kind of heroic physique, like the posture, his face, the clean cut, the strong jawline, I don't know. I think so.
I mean, I wasn't a fan of the first Thor film, and I wasn't terribly engaged by his character in it. I think he works better here.
You hurt my heart, Craig.
I'm just gonna keep saying this because I know it causes you pain.
No.
But the thing is, you don't really get a sense of Chris Hemsworth Thor until Ragnarok, because up until that point, he isn't really playing his own version of that character. Whereas, I guess they embrace the fact he's actually really funny by the end of it. In every other appearance, people laugh at him. He doesn't really make that many jokes.
I think that's okay. Not everything needs to be a comedy.
I know. But it does work for this because the Avengers have someone to make fun of. The Stark calls him Point Break and all that stuff. And he just potters about not knowing really what's going on. He's the big dumb muscle of the group. Other than when Hulk's on screen.
Bigger dumb muscle.
Yeah.
I disagree. I think he's a very nuanced performer, and in fact, I mean, I prefer the Thor of the first film to not that he's bad in Ragnarok. I quite like him. There's an evolution to the character there, which is fine. But my favorite thing about Thor is that he is, the older brother who has been raised to rule. He is the hothead who chases battles even when they're not necessary, and like his journey in the first Thor film to becoming like a more humble and like thoughtful person
over a weekend.
I mean, most stories take place over a few days. Most films in particular, a lot of books too. And, where one big experience changes your attitude. It's possible. It happens. And especially it happens in storytelling. And that's okay. It's okay to have like a short run, but a meaningful one. And I think he definitely portrays that change quite well. I could wax lyrical about the first Thor film and why it means so much to me, but this is not the Thor podcast, and also I've already done that on the Ragnarok podcast. So listeners, if you want to hear me wax lyrical about the first Thor film, listen to the Ragnarok podcast. You will not be disappointed.
The Ragnarok trailer podcast, I think. It was, you were on, wasn't it?
I don't remember. I don't remember which one. One of them.
I'll find it and put it in the show notes.
Cool.
Yeah, one of the many 4 podcasts. It's on one of those ones. I think he has been allowed to show some of his comic chops, and they've obviously slowly learned and gone, oh, he's quite good at doing this, and he's quite good at doing a bit of this, and he's used as a setup to a lot of gags, really, in the initial films. But he does show a little bit of it through there, and I think just pairing him up with a director that's so well known for their sort of comic timing and stuff, just really brung it out in Ragnarok. Whether that's what people wanted to see in a Thor film or not, but I loved it.
Judging by the box office and almost unanimous positive reception, it seems that people wanted it. I know I certainly did. I didn't realise I wanted it until I saw it, though.
Yes.
That's the thing.
It's one of those that if you had it described to you going, well, film number 1 will be this, film number 2 will be that, but film number 3 will be a rip-roaring comedy. Enjoy. It's, I don't think you would go into the first film going, oh, hang on, this isn't what I'm expecting from a film that's going to turn out like this. Imagine if you watched them in reverse.
Yeah.
I think that would be that would be interesting.
The Thor films are definitely divisive among even MCU fans. You know, they're the ones that people can take or leave. But I think the third one is the one, oh man, they finally got it around to what everyone enjoys, or as close to everyone as you can get. And Hemsworth's contract might be up soon, so we might not get another one. You know, that's a shame. But at least I think with Cap, they were getting it right pretty quickly, pretty early on. I mean, I have issues with the first film and the fact that I don't think that anyone should ever be given the pro forma of, you have to give us an origin story, the entirety of the Second World War, and have them frozen, and you've got 2 hours. Go.
Yeah.
You know, and the fact is, how do we do this? We have 3 montages. We spend a bit of time on the origin story, we have a montage, we have another montage, then we have another montage, and then we finish. And there's a lot of people that dig into, his decision to go into the ice when there was clearly other options and all that stuff. But all in all, solid film. And then Winter Soldier, even better. And then Civil War, with hindsight, not as good as Winter Soldier.
Yes.
Still great though, but not as good.
Yeah, absolutely. I recently rewatched Civil War because I'd only ever really seen it when it first came out. And I really wanted to kind of like have a refresher. And yeah, I mean, I think it's like the dinky little cousin of Winter Soldier, it like wants to be, that serious gritty movie. And yet it's packed with a lot more kind of moments where you go, huh? And that just doesn't really land very well, I think, overall. It's still a fun time, of course, but it's no Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier was truly like a political thriller with superheroes in it, and that was what really sold it for me.
And then in Civil War, it's like, oh look, it's Spider-Man and it's Black Panther, and they're all fighting and tearing apart the airport
in a parking lot for some reason.
With a villain with a very convenient plan that just happens to all work. like a lot of villain plans that would never work without convenience. Yeah.
Well, like Loki's plan in this one.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of. That's the only thing about some of these films. You're like, well, how did this villain's plan even happen? They coincidentally need to have fights and arguments and things in order for all this not to work.
Well, this film was one in a long list of villain wants to get captured plans. And Skyfall was out the same year. Same thing happened. The Dark Knight was a couple of years before. Same thing happened.
Yeah.
It's that thing where the villain, he wants to get captured, and the good guys don't realise why. And usually, when they do realise why, it's like, he could have done that without getting captured, probably. But it's just one of those things. Again, I'm having so much fun with it that I don't really mind. So already kind of touched on action, but for me, there's a lot of moments in this film that are just, they're just crowd pleasers, and the list I've got here is, Loki getting ragdolled by the Hulk, which just everyone seems to love, including me. The bit where Hulk punches Thor after they crash through Grand Central Station, and of course that really awesome crowd pleasing Hulk transformation, where he just punches out the big Leviathan creature.
I quite like the sort of little one shot they do jumping between all the different characters during the fight, all your different heroes during the fight.
Yeah.
Joss Whedon loves the single takes.
Oh, but it works, and it gets you the sense of everything that's going on, and I think it's just very well done, that.
Yeah, you start off with Black Widow, move to Iron Man, move to Cap, move to Hawkeye, and then end on Hulk and Thor. Yeah, it's just... And the camera just follows the action, and it always picks a focus point. So, Hawkeye's arrow takes you to the next part, and so on. It's great, yeah. Age of Ultron opens with a similar sequence.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But I don't like that it comes so soon in Age of Ultron, because it's just, I like the feeling of, having earned that moment, rather than, well, here we go. Here's your interconnected single shot of everybody punching bad guys. Enjoy. I think it feels satisfying.
Age of Ultron, you've had an entire film to set that up, and then.
I mean, yes, Yes, but it's just not as satisfying to me personally. I'm not saying it's a bad shot or that it's less good as a moment. It's just coming at the forefront of the film. There's a lot less kind of like it doesn't feel as a payoff. It's more like fan service in a way.
Yeah, and obviously they're big on fan service in this franchise. It's kind of part of how they got so far. But another moment I love is when Steve tells Hulk to smash. That's the only order he gives them.
Guys?
Call it, Captain.
All right, listen up. Until we can close that portal, our priority is containment. Barton, I want you on that roof, eyes on everything, call out patterns and strays. Stark, you got the perimeter. Anything gets more than 3 blocks out, you turn it back or you turn it to ash.
Then give me a lift?
Right. Better clench up, Legolas.
Thor, you gotta try and bottleneck that portal. Slow him down. You got the lightning. Light the bastards up. You and me, we stay here on the ground. We keep the fighting here. And Hulk. Smash.
Obviously, it's the phrase that everyone will have heard of, and it's interesting to just turn it round again. It's the same way that Black Widow turns Loki's manipulation on himself. Steve tells Hulk to smash, because that's what he's going to do anyway.
Like, I do like the Marvel movies, but I thought that Hulk's transformation is the worst part of Avengers. Because that was a bit where he was the character that I liked, and there's all the things you were saying about like how they wanted. He was like, you don't want me for, you don't want me for, being Bruce Banner. You want me to be the Hulk. You want me to be this big weapon. And it's like he's always referring to him as the other guy, and it's like sort of a hidden shame thing. But then when he's like, "Oh no, I can just do it whenever." I was thinking, like all that sort of his character build up, and that sort of like I'm not seeing the Hulk used as like a Jekyll and Hyde style character, and then at the end of it, it's like, oh no, it's just he can just conveniently it's fine. It's like I'll just turn to the Hulk. Like I'm always ready to just go big and green and punch everybody. And I'm just sort of thinking, oh no, sort of the one bit I was really getting into. I was really enjoying this, like the sense of lack of control. It's like you've always referred to him as the other guy, sort of you lose control in the helicarrier. But it's like, oh no, wait, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. I can just Hulk out whenever needed. So I was like the last final sort of, oh fine, I guess.
See, I see that as a very sad moment, actually. Like, less, like, sad for him, like, he's always angry. Like, he has that moment in his introductory scene in Calcutta when, Black Widow corners him in that little hut. And, she says, we'll give you anything you want. Or something like that, and he says, "Oh yeah, because I always get what I want." And in that moment, there's a like a little baby crib, and like he slowly rocks the crib back and forth, and it's like, well, like he would have wanted to have a family and like live a quiet life, but instead he's stuck with this, and of course he's always angry. And so in the moment where he's like, "Actually, Cap, this is my secret. I'm always angry. I always carry this," and that's how I hold him back, because we're always there together, angry. Like that just like I feel sad in that moment rather than like, oh, well, here he is punching things. Like he has to live with this. That sucks. That's not great.
There was a round of applause at that moment where I saw it in the cinema the first time, because it is it's sort of the culmination of everything that you're in the cinema to see at that point. This is the first point where the team are all together. They're all focused on one goal, and you've been building to it for the last 2 hours, and it's just awesome. But yeah, I see the sort of sadness aspect of it, and they do try to do a bit of that in Ragnarok, where he's just like, "No, you don't understand. I'm gone if I turn into the Hulk again," and he's like, "Yeah, you don't care about me." They play it as a joke, but it is actually a really serious thing to
actually.
About.
I mean, the only bit that kind of throws me out is the first time that we see him transform, he's unstoppable, uncontrollable, destroys everything in his wake. There's no sort of control mechanism there. Whereas this final one, it's like, oh, he's in control and he knows what he's supposed to do, and he's taking orders and he's standing down when he needs to, and
See, I've thought a lot about that, and my headcanon suggests that the first transformation, it's like unplanned and
yeah, it's not by
uncontrolled,
choice. Yeah,
yeah, he's completely confused and just lashing out at everything. Whereas the second one, it's premeditated. He has a mission. It happens in the Incredible Hulk as well, where he transforms into the Hulk and then immediately starts fighting the Abomination, and then even just helps people as he's going. All right, it's people that he knows, but the idea is like, if there is some measure of surrendering on Bruce's part when he becomes the Hulk, then the Hulk can be, well, the Hulk's goals can be, can be, what's the word? The Hulk's goals match his in that moment because he understands why he's transforming. It's all headcanon, and I'm possibly trying to explain bad writing. But,
I'll go with your headcanon because headcanon's fine. It's only if you're sitting there and you're trying to pick through things like folk do that you kind of go, well, what about... But like you say, headcanon, okay, he wasn't expecting it, and the next time he's all prepared and he's ready to go. And I suppose that kind of follows what they do in the other films, and Ragnarok explains it in its own sort of way.
Yeah.
That it does. It'll be interesting to see where he ends up in the latest installment.
Yeah. What do we think of the ending? After the Battle of New York's over and everyone's like become Avengers fanboys, there's someone skateboarding as Captain America, Stan Lee's like superheroes, whatever. I really like that because it gives you that kind of... It's what's missing in a lot of superhero films, perversely, as in the heroes actually being heroes. You rarely see the kind of... They've set an example for people. People are looking up to them. But at the end of the Avengers, it gives you that. It gives you everybody reacting to what's happened. And the people on the ground are just grateful that there was people there fighting for them.
I mean, yeah, like, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
If we had a massive alien invasion, well, good thing you guys were here.
So we're really lucky we had those 7 people helping us out.
Hey, better than nobody.
One of them had a gun, one of them had a frisbee. I think there was a bow and arrow involved. It was all a good time.
A frisbee! Vibranium frisbees.
It is basically a frisbee.
I guess so. Oh man, that's so much less cool now. Like, actually, as an aside, the way that he uses his shield as a frisbee, that's also kind of a boomerang.
Yeah.
Not a big fan of that, I have to say. The idea that if you throw a round object, somehow it will return exactly to you, like, it's preposterous.
Well, it's like Spider-Man says, this thing does not obey the laws of physics.
Yes.
But it's what happens in the comics, so I'm glad when you see it bouncing off stuff and then coming back to him, and it's like his command of geometry is amazing, because he can immediately do the calculations in his head. It's almost like in a video game where time slows down and you see the little arrows showing where it bounces off to come back. Like hits off these villains, little waypoints that he makes in his head. Yeah, I don't mind that at all. Again, that's a bit of fan service in the comic. That's why he has the shield, because it does that, and he can do that. But yeah, it's weird that the heroism part of it is there, because, well, it's not weird. I mean, it's weird that it's not there in other films, in other superhero films.
Yeah, I guess so.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to take a break here. The discussion is far too long to be contained within a single entry, so it has been split into more manageable chunks. Part 2 is available directly below Part 1 if you're listening on the website, or will be right after this one on whatever app you're using. A very special thanks to YouTuber Dagma for the supplied music, and we hope you'll join us in Part 2 for more Marvel madness.